everyone to Just Football, Not Soccer. So it has been a while since Miko and I have recorded, but we are back and we are back with a bang. And I think today we wanted to talk about something I think if you're a soccer team fan or a football fan around the world, you will inevitably have a conversation with regards to who your manager is. The decision around a manager will always divide a fan base, especially when results aren't going your way. And the question always comes in, how much time should you give a manager? Does it depend on the size of the team, how many years he deserves or months? How many games does he have to lose in a row? What is the size of the score they have to lose to, which warrants them to get fired or sacked, as they say? So we wanted to dive into that because I think being a manager and any decision around managers is very contentious. And I've seen in many teams, the teams that I support, teams that I've just observed from afar, that a manager and the role of a manager obviously has shifted throughout the years. If you think of the greats like Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, now obviously Pep Guardiola has taken over and to redefine that, and obviously has redefined success. And a lot of people would like to compare these kind of managers from different generations, but if you look at Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, the likes of Cruyff, all these amazing managers, obviously they never had as much money as the modern day manager has at their disposal, but it's obviously different times, so it's difficult to ascertain exactly who's the better manager. You obviously have to look at their success. But what we want to talk about today, and Miko, again, I'm going to push over to you as we get started, is what is your thoughts when it comes to the role of a manager and how managers are so disposable these days? You often see that if a manager, after 6 months of not performing on the field, will get sacked, will get fired, a new manager comes in, the same cycle repeats itself. So what are your thoughts, and give me some examples of what you've seen and your opinion on the whole trade around managers in global and international soccer and football?
Okay, brother. I think that there are two type of managers nowadays. I think that there is a manager that really focus and work on the tactic and technique, and there are other managers, another type of manager that really works on the management, how to manage the group of football player, especially when the players are very good players. They are champions. Imagine about like Real Madrid, Carlo Ancelotti, you know? If you think about Carlo Ancelotti, because why Carlo Ancelotti? Ancelotti is the manager that was 20 years ago already. He was already a manager like Sir Alex Ferguson or Arsene Wenger, like you mentioned before. And he's still today a manager with all the new generations like Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola. And Carlo Ancelotti never changed his way to teach football. And what he does is to build a relationship with these. He always had the majority of his career. He had very big teams, right? Like very successful teams, like Milan. He was in Juventus, Real Madrid, Chelsea, PSG, and he's very good to build a good relationships with all these great players. And he doesn't really teach how to control the ball or how to touch the ball or I don't know how to play tiki taka like Guardiola. But he just goes inside the mind of the players. On the other side, you have coaches as Pep Guardiola or Roberto De Zerbi nowadays. There is one of the best young coaches on the market. They like more to play on the technique, the tactic. They like to move the ball fast. They like to teach more football, and then the other coaches, and of course about fired or not fired. This it depends, bro, on the results. Sometimes it feels unfair when a manager gets fired. Like I don't know if you check Mourinho, no? Jose Mourinho was just fired from Rome, and
So
I
I
believe
think,
he didn't like it.
yeah, so talking about Mourinho, I think what's obviously come up now in the media is his interview that he just recently did with Rio Ferdinand on Rio Ferdinand's YouTube channel 5. And he talks about how the different relationships Mourinho had, and specifically had at Porto, then at
Hmm.
Chelsea, then he went to Madrid, then Inter, then or Inter,
Hmm.
then Madrid, and then back to Chelsea, and then to Manchester United and Spurs, and the whole every club is different. And I think a lot of people when they talk about Jose Mourinho, is that he's kind of at the tail end of his career now. He doesn't have the influence or he doesn't have the pedigree that he once had. And talking to your point of Carlo and Ancelotti, he's almost been timeless. Wherever he's been
Hmm.
successful
Hmm.
and for a prolonged period of time. But I do think that Mourinho is still, as he deemed himself, the special one. But I think the way in which players are managed now is very different, especially when you're focusing on man management. Players now, it seems, based on these instances that you see at the likes of Juventus with Paul Pogba or Manchester United or PSG with Mbappe and all of these big clubs with all these modern day superstars, they almost need an arm around their neck just to make sure that they feel appreciated, that they feel like they are the most sought out player and the most preferred player. But what that creates is tension and animosity between the players and the club and the manager. You've seen many times what they call player power, where the players will almost dictate a situation until the point where a manager actually gets fired, because it's far easier to get rid of a manager than it is to get rid of a bunch of players. We've seen this several times. But to your point of now having different managers, you get a manager and you get a coach. If we look at Mourinho, his style and what made him successful, especially during his time at Porto and at Chelsea, and obviously at Real Madrid, is that he had some of the best players in the world. I mean, he coached Cristiano when Cristiano was at his peak. And he even goes on to say that he didn't have to actually train him. He just had to know and make him happy. And I think that's a way of management. But everyone deserves
Exactly.
will expect to be treated different. And this is where the complexity of being a manager is. If you look at like someone like Jurgen Klopp, his style of coaching or his style of management is obviously very different to Pep Guardiola, but he's been able to keep up and compete with Pep throughout the last few years with two completely
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
styles. But if you look at Pep, yes, very good man manager, but he focuses a lot on the technical side of the game, whereas Jurgen Klopp focuses more on the man management side of the game. But both their teams, and this is testament to the structure of the club above them with regards to the sporting director, the CEO, and the likes, is that regardless of who the manager is and regardless of which player they bring on, that player and that manager needs to fit the style that the club has now put in place. This is why teams like Brighton are successful, regardless if they have De Zerbi or before him they had Graham Potter. Regardless of who's there, the club style remains. And this is what really makes a very good sporting director for a club. And why I bring that up now is that I think a lot of managers now that were successful in the past are struggling to be successful and remain relevant today. You have to completely change the way in which you used to manage. And I'm talking to people like Mourinho and even Jurgen Klopp. At the end of the season, he's going to be leaving Liverpool to take on another project when he's ready. Him already will need to change the way in which he coaches wherever he goes, whether it's international team or another team, maybe in Germany. It has to
Hmm.
be completely different. And I think the manager now wears very much not only one cap; they take on different roles. And I think the success of a manager is
Agree.
obviously is dictated now by the structure above them. A manager should not be the one that's identifying, scouting, choosing, negotiating contracts like we've seen in some clubs. They need a structure above them so they can just focus on their job. And I think when you look at clubs like even like Man United, everyone's saying like Ten Hag out or Ten Hag should be in. Is that wouldn't it be fair to give him the opportunity if he had a structure above him that made him focus solely on his job or
Hmm.
what he's
Hmm.
intended to do? Because when he came into Manchester United, because the club was in such disarray and because the structure of the club was tailored more towards a commercial model as opposed to a football model, is that he had worn many hats and made a lot of mistakes by doing this, choosing the wrong players, maybe pushing the sporting director too much to buy a player like Anthony for too much money, right? But it's the club's fault for paying that kind of money. They should push back. My point is that I think managers don't get enough time that they deserve. And you look at even Pochettino now at Chelsea. They're currently 10th in the league and they spent over $1 billion dollars on players. But they didn't, the structure and the strategy of the club was very poor. They didn't have a defined style of football they wanted to play. But now it sets the manager up for failure, if you get what I'm saying. But yeah,
Hey, bro,
that's kind of
let's
my
be
stance on
honest.
it.
Let's be honest. Football changed, right? In 10 years, football changed really a lot. And there are some managers that identify themselves with a new era of football, and there are other managers that didn't improve themselves. Even good managers, very good managers, I don't know, I can think about Massimiliano Allegri in Juventus. He started 3 years ago the second era in Juventus as a coach and didn't change anything. After 3 years, Juventus is still sucking. And also, if you think about Napoli, Napoli got already changed to coach this season. Garcia and Mazzarri. Mazzarri was the coach, very good coach in Napoli with Edinson Cavani, Ezequiel Lavezzi, Marek Hamsik was a great team. And his ideas back in the day are not good ideas nowadays. If you see, they just fired him. I guess today, yeah, they fired him today before and like a very, very crucial match against Barcelona in Champions League. What I want to say with that there are some coaches that probably didn't improve themselves, didn't see the football is changing. Football years ago was more technique. Football nowadays is more physical and more strength and there is less technique. If you see the football players nowadays, they're super fit. You remember football players years ago, like Ronaldo el Fenomeno, Ronaldinho, many other players. I mean, they didn't look very, very good athletes, right? But football was insane. It was more technique. So football is changing, and managers are changing either. And so they have to be able to understand the way football is going. And there are some coaches like probably Mourinho as well. Mourinho didn't prove as much as he should be, and that's why he got fired from Rome.
I do want to push back on your thing of with regards to how football has become more physical than technical. I think it's become the
Hmm.
opposite because if you look at the physical aspect of it nowadays, you can't even make like a half physical challenge on a player before you get a foul or a yellow card. I think the game has become more technical because of influences like VAR, where players aren't allowed to now go hard in tackles because it always gets brought back. And there's
They
even the
don't go together,
Argentine.
brother. They don't go together because yeah, I agree with you. Agree with you
Mm,
that now you can't touch players. And they give you red card, yellow card, VAR, all these rules. I mean, football is becoming slower and probably less beautiful than before.
maybe less fluid is probably what you may be trying to say. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree
yeah.
with you on that. So yeah, just before we end off, I just wanted to pull this up now. So focusing on the managers again, and we speak about Mourinho, is that choosing a manager is an integral and probably the most important decision a club can make. Because obviously, bringing a manager on board costs you money, not only to sign them or get them out of the
Mhm.
contract from another team that they already signed to, it's their wages, their salaries. Obviously, the leagues that you compete in all depend on that. And the legal fees in which you have to obviously take on, not only to sign them, but when you have to fire them. So I'm putting up Jose Mourinho's payouts now. So we're going to work backwards from Roma. So for Roma now, because he got fired, it was 3 million pounds they have to pay. When he got fined at Tottenham Hotspur, he made 15 million pounds that they had to pay because they obviously have to pay him out of his contract. Manchester United, they had to pay him 19.6 million pounds. Chelsea 8.3 million. Real Madrid 17 million. Chelsea 18 million. Think how much money he's made. He's made over $60 million just by being fired. And to our point is that if a club is wanting to sign on a manager and give him a 3-year deal, they should know already what style of football that he wants to play and what they want to play, and they should be aligned. Because look how much money that's costing. For
If
Man
he
United, paying him.
matches with the football players that the team has in that time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But also, a manager will move on, a player will move on. That's why the club, and no player is bigger than the club. A player will always move on. So the club needs to have an identity and a structure. Like I said, when Pep leaves, a lot of the structure that he's put in place with the
Exactly.
senior men will remain. So the next manager that comes in will, of course, have his own take on how he wants to play. But the club will enforce that because they have a model that works. Don't break something that works. So yeah, in saying that, Miko, I think we've come to the end. It was a great podcast. So everyone that's listening, please like and subscribe. We are back. You'll be seeing more episodes coming up in a few weeks. Miko, take care.
Take care. Bye, guys.